How good is your favorite NFL team entering Week 8? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch here, back with another week of the BLV NFL Power Rankings. This is the unscripted, unfiltered feelings about every NFL team entering Week 8. If that sounds good, spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for weekly NFL Power Rankings, where I rank every team from the worst to the best. The only channel that will give you the truth. The only place on YouTube where you'll get what I'm actually thinking out loud. I don't have a script. I just go, bro. Let me know in the comments if you have any opinion at all that's different from my own. Let me know in the comments if you agree with my power rankings or you disagree with my power rankings. I want to hear your opinion. So just bring it, brother. Let's begin with the worst team in the NFL. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually have switched my worst team in the NFL after the New England Patriots went to London and got dismantled in the second quarter and the second half by Doug Peterson's Jacksonville Jags. I thought there was absolutely no way that the Patriots would not rank 32. And after the entire week of Gerard Mayo versus Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo is a clown, calling out his players. We'll talk about that in a minute. There was a team on Sunday that made Marcus Mariota look like a young man. They made 2017 NFL show up on your screen. Mariota to Zach Ertz, touchdown. Yeah, the Carolina Panthers are back at the number 32 spot, baby. For a couple weeks there, they were actually ahead of the Patriots. I was saying the Patriots suck. They're the worst team. There's no chance anyone's worse. No, there's definitely a chance. The Carolina Panthers got absolutely wrecked by the Washington Commanders. It was not even competitive from start to finish. It looked like a local high school team was taking on an NFL team. It was awful. Awful. The Carolina Panthers are awful. They're bad. And you think about this organization. It's ran by the owner, who just so happens to be the biggest D-bag walking in the NFL. The owner's wife, who's on camera making decisions for the team from a roster standpoint. So you got those two guys. Then you've got Dan Morgan as the GM, who I don't think he has any idea what he's doing. Then you've got a coach, Dave Canales, wearing smaller shirts than Durkant. Then you've got literally a small human playing quarterback. And honestly, bro, I feel like Bryce Young's going to get back in the lineup. They don't want him to, but we just heard some pretty terrible news about Andy Dalton. And the only likable thing about this team was Andy Dalton, the Red Rifle, seeing a resurgence from the Red Rifle. But in recent weeks, it hasn't been looking like a resurgence. It's been looking pretty bad. Now we might get Bryce Young back. If we're getting Bryce Young back, this team was the worst team with Andy Dalton. Now imagine the worst quarterback you've ever seen in your life coming back to the worst team you've ever seen in your life. The Carolina Panthers are in the category of the 0-16 Browns. If they would have stuck with Bryce Young for the entire season, I think this team would have gone 0-16, 0-17, whatever the heck our records are nowadays. They would have lost every game. You get my point. They suck. They can't stop anybody. They can't tackle. They don't rush the passer. Can you even name one of their pass rushers? Well, it's a shocker that Jadeveon Clowney got hurt. Wow, I'm absolutely shocked. The offense, The offensive line actually has been solid. The run game's actually been solid, led by Canadian Hubbard. But is Deontay Johnson going to get traded? I mean, this team is poorly ran, poorly coached, poorly executed, no talent. They're awful. So at number 32, the Panthers are the only team that would lose to the New England Patriots at number 31. Now, the Patriots do take on the New York Jets at home this week, so there's at least hope that if there is one situation in the NFL that is more unreliable, more disjointed than the one in New England, the one in New York is pretty close. I mean, the Jets just keep coming up week after week with a new thing to try to save their team. One week, it's let's fire Robert Saleh, our best coach, although I've always said Robert Saleh is not a great coach. I do think he was their best coach because you look at their staff. This new head coach, what does he even do? It looks like he's doing a Nick Sirianni impression. And then you've got the offensive coordinator, Mr. Hackett, who's a bum. You got Todd Downing, who is literally the worst offensive coordinator in football the last time he was an offensive coordinator. So Robert Saleh, believe it or not, with all his running of the steps, was still more prepared than these coaches. And apparently he's actually helping his buddy there get prepared for these games. And they still suck because you watched them in the first half. They actually had a good first half against the Steelers. I don't know why I'm talking about the Jets, bro. This is a Patriots ranking. But the Jets got me going, right? So the Jets are taking on the Patriots. And I'm trying to kind of get away from my Patriots by talking about the Jets. But the Patriots are like in a really bad spot. Like I never thought the Patriots would get in this spot because I had faith in Mr. Robert Kraft. But Robert Kraft has allowed this team, this franchise, to get this low by the way that they've disrespected Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick has gone out of his way to disrespect Jerod Mayo, who right after a game proved that he's an absolute utter jabroni by calling out the players and calling them soft. Last time I checked, Mr. Mayo, the defense has players like Kyle Duggar. The defense has players like Jonathan Jones. These players are not soft. Maybe you are not a good coach. Maybe. And the other problem with this team is the fact that their best player is a rookie who's played 2 games. Now, there is hope for Patriots fans, Patriots Nation, as we call them. Drake May is really good. He's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I have no doubt in my mind. He's one of 2 quarterbacks since the merger to put up the stats that he's put up in the first 2 games of an NFL career. The other one is Dan the Man, the Italian Stallion Marino. So shout out to Marino. Drake May. 2 MA names, bro. Marino, May. May go on to be Marino at this rate. But Marino never had a good defense. I don't know if May's ever going to have a good defense at this rate. The Patriots defense was absolute utter ASS against the Jags. They got ran all over. Their D tackles look like they're getting indented into the field. Their linebackers are absolutely lost. And their O-line is still in shambles. Drake May looks like he's dodging, like he's in Mission Impossible out there, bro. He looks like he's in the Matrix. Like, what are we talking about? Demario Douglas gets sick at the 4th play of the game, our best receiver. Our run game is averaging negative 2 yards a carry at this rate. Team is ass, okay? But Drake May gives us hope, and Drake May makes them better than the Panthers. Let's just hope the game's close against the Jets. That's all I really hope for. At number 30, the New Orleans Saints, the current incarnation of the Saints. This team is horrible. If there is a team the Patriots can beat, it's this Spencer Rattler-led, no Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed having Saints team. They are awful. They made the Denver Broncos look like the 2015 Denver Broncos defense. Did you guys watch that game? I hope not. It was on Thursday night. The Saints looked inept. They could not run the ball, throw the ball, block. Rattler looked horrible. That was bad. The offense lost. Kubiak, predictable. The defense, Dennis Allen, I thought you were a stud, dude. I thought, if anything, I could count on Dennis Allen's defense, Dennis Allen's scheme. It's not like they have a ton of injuries. The defense is so bad. The amount of zone coverages that are just leaving guys wide, butt-ass naked open, like guys that are they just run 4 yards, turn around, and then they pick up 18. Like, what is that? What type of defense is that? Pass rush is terrible. Middle of the field is wide open. They look like the Bucs defense, bro. So the Saints, no offense, no defense. Derek Carr needs to save this team. And whenever Derek Carr needs to save your team, you know you suck. They just re-signed, extended Alvin Kamara. I don't know why he allowed them to do that. I guess he only cares about money. This team is horrible. Now, at least they're a little bit better with Derek Carr. At number 29, the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are really bad, but I will give them credit that they actually fight and try hard, like most of the time. I can't really say that for Carolina. Absolutely not. They do not tackle. They do not care to tackle. The Patriots, they don't like their coach. And then the Saints, they are just flat out awful. And I think they want their coach fired as well. And they have a rookie quarterback. With the Raiders, they've got Gardner Minshew, who looks the worst I've ever seen him in the NFL. I mean, erratic, panicked, all those words. Running back situation is literally Alexander Madison. That tells you about their running game. Their O-line is constantly shifting and altering every single week. The receivers, I mean, they don't have Devontae Adams or Jacoby Myers. Like, if not for Brock Bowers, I don't know how they would pick up first downs. And yeah, I kind of like Trey Tucker, but he's like a third receiver at best. The defense actually played really well against the Rams. I felt like they fought really hard, despite some of the injuries they do have to guys on the defensive line. It does make you wonder how good the defense could have been if they were fully healthy the whole year. Max Crosby's still playing hard, and the defense, I thought, did a great job against the run, against the Rams in crucial short yardage, which kept them in the game. And yeah, their secondary played tight, but to me, like, the Raiders, thankfully, they have Tom Brady, because Tom Brady is, I think for Raiders fans, like, honestly, like, realistically, Tom Brady might be able to salvage the Raiders. And what I mean by this is, I think he can come in there and be a guy that Mark Davis actually listens to. Because I feel like the biggest problem with the Raiders has been the people that Mark Davis listens to. He listens to the fans. He listens to the players. And he's too easily influenced. Okay? He legitimately thought that his 26-year-old girlfriend, who is smoking hot, liked him for his haircut and his smile. We obviously know that's not true, okay? It's probably because he's a billionaire. Maybe. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. It's a guess. You know, he's not exactly Brad Pitt, but it's a guess, okay? Now, Tom Brady will be able to go in there and tell Mark, okay, yes, you have a nice smile, Mark, but you might want to switch your haircut. But beyond that, he might be able to also go in and tell Mark, okay, this is a quarterback we need. This is who we should draft. Okay? He might be able to go in there and say, this is how a team should look. He should be able to go to the practice, watch the practice, see how it's being ran, probably figure out that Antonio Pierce is not a good coach, have influence over the next hire at head coach, and then be able to help Mark identify who runs a good culture. Because as we know in the NFL, culture is everything. It starts from culture on the way up. You obviously need good players, but it starts from culture and belief in your program. And that's how you begin to win. Ask Lions fans. So, at number 29, the Raiders. At number 28, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans are at number 28 because I think they have a couple things about their team that make them not one of the absolute worst teams. Their defense is really good. You can't say that about any of the other teams I've mentioned. Their run game is decent, and they do have talented players on the outside. Their quarterback situation is a joke. Their head coach might not be it. And there is a little bit of quit in their offensive personnel. But I absolutely love what I see from the defense pretty consistently. It just so happened that they ran out of steam and took on Josh Allen in Buffalo. So that happens. But Mason Rudolph, he wasn't good. He didn't make the mistakes Levis did, but he doesn't make the throws Levis does. I'm not sure where they're going to go at quarterback, but that's why they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. At number 27, Jacksonville. I was impressed by their second half performance. They looked more like the team I thought they would be this season. You know, they were balanced on offense. This was probably the best rushing performance they've had all year, with Tank Bigsby being the guy, Travis Etienne being out, and Tank Bigsby should be the starter from here on out, in my opinion. Etienne should be the spell back. Wide receiver play, Brian Thomas is legitimately a stud. I think that's confirmed now. And I think people should look back at their wide receiver rankings in the draft and wonder why Brian Thomas was not more of a top 10 type of guy in the draft circles. Now, I had him as my number 3 in my draft class, but I really liked him. I thought he should have been a top 15 pick. I'm a little confused why teams in the NFL didn't feel like he was at least a top 15 pick. He's only big, fast, scored a lot of touchdowns. I don't know. But yeah, he's awesome. Christian Kirk can still play at a pretty high level. Evan Ingram is still pretty talented. And Trevor Lawrence played probably his most clean, best game of his season. It wasn't like sexy statistically, but it was very clean, and I felt he was accurate. I felt he threw the ball down the field well. And he didn't really have a lot of pressure on him, but he made the plays that were necessary. Defensively, I thought they took advantage mostly of just a poor personnel offense in New England. They did get shredded a little bit by Drake May, but Drake May is the best quarterback in the league. So what are you going to ask for, right? So at number 27, Jacksonville's getting better. I felt like they played really well against Chicago in the first half. And then for some reason, everything imploded, kind of like the Jets this past week. They played well against the Texans. They've had their moments of playing well. Now, can they put it together and turn this thing around? They still have enough talent to make things interesting down the stretch. At number 26, the Giants. I had them around like 20 last week, but they lost their left tackle, Andrew Thomas, and man, I don't think a team has looked drastically different due to one injury more so than the Giants with Andrew Thomas, not including quarterback injuries, obviously. Like, Andrew Thomas has completely flipped this team's prospects from a team that was pretty promising as like a feisty underdog. Maybe they could scrap out 7 wins to a team that looks awful on offense. They got sacked 8 times. They could not run the ball. Daniel Jones was awful. Malik Neighbors was frustrated, and the offense was inept. They looked bad against the Bengals, but at least it felt like they had more of a semblance of like they could move the ball a bit, but they kept faltering near the 50. Against the Eagles, they were just utterly dominated at the line of scrimmage, and they couldn't do shit, right? The other side of the ball for the Giants is actually pretty solid. Like, they've got a good pass rush. I think their defense is well coordinated. They do a good job getting after quarterbacks. But they do give up big plays in their secondary because they don't have the most talented cornerback group. So at number 26, I still believe in Daboll. I think they're overall well coached, but Andrew Thomas has changed this team. I heard they're recruiting DJ Humphries, which would be a huge addition for them. At number 25, the Cleveland Brownies. The Browns have actually moved up because Jameis Winston, I think, is going to be their starting quarterback, I believe. Now, unfortunately, they did sign Bailey Zappi, which might be one of the worst moves I've ever seen. And please, no, I do not want to see Bailey Zappi on an NFL field. Please do not make me watch that. I will not. I refuse to watch Bailey Zappi. I said in the preseason, if you make me watch Bailey Zappi, I will hurt myself. Probably. Maybe not. I'm just kidding. Okay. But maybe. Okay. He's that bad. Don't put Bailey Zappi in the game. At quarterback, Jameis, I think, is an upgrade over Deshaun Watson, and I've been saying that for weeks. Jameis is also the funniest player in the NFL. His clip after the game about Deshaun Watson is one of my favorite clips I've ever seen, and it's unintentionally very, very funny. Amari Cooper left, and all of a sudden, Cedric Tillman looks like the next coming of Anquan Bolden. Nick Chubb looked horrible. He looked more like Robin than Batman. The O-line is still pretty booty, and they couldn't move the ball against the Bengals defense. That's been pretty suspect this year. Defensively, though, they have still a top 5 defense in the NFL, and that's why they're number 25. I also think that the defense, combined with a quarterback that they actually want to play for, is a pretty interesting mix. So this team could actually be very underrated in the coming weeks. They've got an interesting game against Baltimore, where Baltimore's coming off a short week Monday night game, and I think it's in Cleveland. So we'll see what Cleveland brings. Like, if they're competitive against Baltimore, then maybe we can just blame the entire season on Deshaun Watson. At number 24, the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts are awful, and yet they rank at number 24. They won a game that they shouldn't have won against the Dolphins. I thought they were outplayed for a majority of the game. Anthony Richardson is one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL. He can't complete any passes. He is a physical monster, but he just doesn't know how to accurately throw the football. The run game has been pretty disappointing in my opinion this year. I think that some of the younger players on the defensive backfield have maybe proven me wrong to a certain degree in recent weeks, but they haven't really played great competition, so it's hard to say. Their D-line is still playing at an admirable level, although they give up too many rushing yards, and we could see them maybe be a seller at the deadline. I wouldn't be shocked. This team is obsessed with draft picks that they'll spend on a guard or something, probably another linebacker, because that's the Colts, Ballard. The wide receivers are good, but nobody can throw them the ball, and they're sitting their best quarterback, who's elite. At number 23, the Los Angeles Rams. I'm wearing the shirt. Shout out to Rams fans. I told you I got a shirt. I told you I got a Rams shirt, bro. It's a Super Bowl shirt. Shout out to the Rams fans. If there's any of you left, I thought I got rid of you already because you said that the Rams were going to win this division. Now, I heard Cooper Kupp might get traded. Just please, for the love of everything that is holy, do not trade him to the Chiefs. If you do that, I will never cheer for the Rams again. I will hate Sean McVay. So please do not do that. I don't want to hate the Rams because I have Kyron and Puka in fantasy, and I love Matthew Stafford, which is why I have the shirt. Okay? The offense should be better when Kupp comes back, and Puka is going to be practicing now, so that means he should be back by week 10. Honestly, with the current state of this division, if I were the Rams, I'd still give it a shot. See if they can win this game on Thursday, see how that goes. Kupp's going to be in the lineup, so we'll see how it goes. It's also at home, I think, so that helps. The defense, I really loved how they rushed the quarterback against the Raiders. I thought they got a lot of pressure and caused a lot of mistakes and turnovers. I was very impressed. Their run defense, though, is still pretty pathetic, and I think that just comes down to personnel. They just get pushed around. And against the Raiders, when you get pushed around, that's pretty bad. I'm not going to lie. Sean McVay has had an okay year. I'm a little bit disappointed with him offensively. And Stafford, I'm also disappointed with. I feel like he's making too many mistakes. So at number 23, we'll see what happens with Stafford, with Kupp, with these trades. But they're at number 23. At number 22, the Cardinals. They won in an upset, small upset, at home on Monday night against the Chargers. I'm not going to overreact to it, but I felt like their defense played pretty well. It does help when the Cardinals are facing an offense that doesn't have an edge from a personnel standpoint, because the Cardinals are actually a well-coached defense. Now, what hurts them is Dennis Gardeck got injured. He's been one of their best players over the last 2 years, and honestly, one of the most underrated players in the NFL, in my opinion. Their offense is still pretty underwhelming. Even against a good Charger defense, I thought they were underwhelming. Marvin Harrison, underwhelming. Marvin Harrison's usage, underwhelming. James Conner is maybe their best player right now. Their O-line is pretty inconsistent. Kyler's pretty inconsistent from a passing standpoint. His rushing is definitely back, though. Another long touchdown. Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch have their moments, but they're not consistent. And Trey McBride has also been a bit disappointing for my expectation. He's an excellent player, but I feel like he should be better than he is for some reason. So Cardinals just don't have a lot of talent on defense, and their offense is underwhelming, which is why they're at number 22. At number 21, the disaster that is in the New York Jets. The New York Jets are such a disaster that I talked about the Jets for about half of the New England Patriots segment, which is how big of a disaster the Jets are, okay? I don't even know where to start, okay? Like, Devontae Adams, he's lost to the Steelers 2 weeks in a row. If they trade him to the Giants, he has a chance to loosen them 3 weeks in a row. Devontae Adams, his best play in his first game was diving for a tackle. That's pretty pathetic. Tyron Smith can't block me currently. I don't know what's going on. He's washed. Morgan Moses, just as washed. Aaron Rodgers, maybe just as washed. Aaron Rodgers is making uncharacteristic interceptions. Aaron Rodgers is weird because I feel like he still has an arm. He still has accuracy. He still has touch. But he's like a lunatic or something. I don't understand what he's doing. He's not playing like Aaron Rodgers. He's playing like a clone of Aaron Rodgers that doesn't have any brains, bro. Like, what's going on? Breece Hall feels like he lost like a gear on his speed. He can't break away anymore. Braylon Allen just disappeared. What happened to him? Mike Williams is in an asylum. Please check if he's okay. I think Aaron Rodgers might have him out, to be executed or something. Like, what's going on with Mike Williams? Is he okay, bro? Garrett Wilson is still good, but like, I feel like he's still underwhelming. Like, the Jets are just a joke. Their offensive coaching is awful. Their defense is super, super disappointing. Like, probably out of all the units in the NFL, they might be the most disappointing unit in the NFL. They got shredded by Russell Wilson. They got shredded by Najee Harris. I mean, that is disappointing, okay? They got shredded by a team that constantly targets Darnell Washington. Like, I don't even know what to say at this point. George Pickens mossed like 8 people. Pat Freiermuth is catching the ball one-handed. Like, what are we doing here? Russell Wilson looked like 2013 Russell Wilson against the New York Jets. This team is not good, but fortunately for them, they play the New England Patriots, who don't even want to play. At number 20, the Dallas Cowboys. They get a fresh bye and a fresh start, and all of a sudden they have to play the team that they can never beat, the San Francisco 49ers, on Sunday Night Football in San Francisco. Good luck. The 49ers are going to be angry, and at least the Dallas Cowboys take on the Niners coming off a Brandon Ayuk season-ending injury. You know, Debo was in the hospital. So at least they have some things to look forward to in terms of, matchups potentially. But this is probably a pretty terrible game to get back on track against for them. But I honestly just feel like Dallas is just not a good team. Like, Dak, I still think is decent, although he's not playing his best football. CeeDee Lamb is amazing. Don't get me wrong. I like Jake Ferguson. But honestly, you look at their offense, and when you're having to count on a guy like, I don't know, Rico Dowdle, old man Zeke, Jalen Tolbert, these are not players you want to be counting on. They're not priority players. Their tackles are awful. Awful. They can't block. Their defense can't stop the run a lick. And I don't care if Parsons is in there or not. They can't stop the run. And their secondary is just slow. Like, honestly, their linebackers are bad. Like, this team just doesn't have good players. Like, it's kind of wild to say that about Dallas, because I feel like even when they were not as good as people thought they would be, they still had talented players. Like, right now, they don't even have like half a good team. They've got like 10 good players on their team right now. Like, they're not good at all. At number 19, the Chargers. Also a team with 10 good players, but they do have good coaching and a good quarterback. They disappointingly lost a game they should win against the Cardinals. And I felt like they lost it because they don't have playmakers. Like, Herbert played pretty well, in my opinion, in terms of throwing the football where it needed to go, but his players just don't make any plays. The offense is very basic. They run the ball for 3 yards in a cloud of dust, and then they run like play action or drop back pass, like basic concepts. And, they've got the former Ravens offensive coordinator. What do you expect? No passing game. Like, Ladd McConkey's their best receiver, which is not ideal as a rookie. They need a receiver desperately. They should really think about Cooper Kupp or something. I know that they're not a contender, but just to make them respectable on offense. Their defense is actually pretty good, but they did allow, a couple big plays in that game, like the Kyler run was pretty backbreaking. Jim Harbaugh, he's been good this year. Like, I give him credit. I think the culture is pointing in the right direction. We didn't expect much on this channel from this team this year. I think they're in the race for the playoffs, which is about where I would expect for them this year. They just don't have a lot of talent on offense, and it's pretty evident. Like, they're a tough football team. They seem to play well every week, like competitively every week. It's just they're not that talented on offense. At number 18, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I don't really know how to rank. It sucked to see Chris Godwin get hurt. I'm not going to lie. Like, I almost teared up when he got hurt. Obviously I have him in fantasy, but not even just that. Like, Chris Godwin's one of my favorite players. Of course, like, I was a Bucs fan, you guys know, for a little bit there. Legit Bucs fan too. So like, Chris Godwin's one of my guys, and I just respect him a lot. Just seems like a great person, really loved by his fans, family guy, young father, I think. Like, yeah, Chris Godwin's just a good guy, man. And it sucks to see guys get hurt, especially he got hurt for a season last year, or not 2 years ago. So repeat injuries for that guy. There's differences between Deshaun Watson getting hurt and a guy like Chris Godwin getting hurt. It's just, and seeing that at the end of the game when it didn't really matter that much, that was just awful. Mike Evans got hurt as well. It should be short term, but 3 weeks is still huge. Like, they're not going to win without Evans and Godwin when their defense can't stop anybody. Wide open players everywhere. Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely, Mark Andrews, Justice Hill. Can't tackle. Can't defend screen passes. Like, the Bucs were getting absolutely worked by the Ravens offense, and it wasn't even like there was a couple great Lamar plays, especially early, but for the most part, there's just guys wide fucking open. Like, excuse my French, but that's just the case. Like, that's terrible defense. Their pass rush still leaves something to be desired. Their offense, when Baker makes mistakes, they can't win because they can't win low-scoring games. And without their receivers, they're not going to win low-scoring games. They're going to have to win shootouts without their playmakers. It's just going to be hard for them. I think I'd put them out of the playoffs at this rate. They've got to play the Chiefs. They've got to play the Falcons. And they've got to play the Niners in their next 3 matchups. Those feel like 3 losses. I'm sorry to say. I love the Bucs. I hope they do well. It's hard to say, man. At number 17, I've got the Miami Dolphins. I know that they were like way at the bottom of my power rankings and they lost this week. But this is all on Tua. I think the Dolphins are one of those teams that don't know how to adapt to a backup quarterback. They are entirely dependent on their identity, which is this Tua manufactured passing offense. And I'm not saying that Miami looked great early in the year with Tua against Buffalo or Jacksonville, but I do believe in this team from the standpoint of Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. These guys will be better players with Tua there. That makes their entire offense better, more dangerous. It feels like they've just been waiting for Tua to come back. They're not in an absolute dreadful situation sitting at 2-4. They can easily reverse their fortune with a game against Arizona this week. Mike McDaniel, I still believe in his offensive philosophy, and I feel like their defense has been coached really well this year. I feel like their defense is honestly like a top 10-ish unit. So it's a combination of maybe their offense isn't as good as it used to be, but if it's still like top 12, top 15 with Tua there, and they've got a top 15 defense, this is probably an average football team. So that's why I have them at number 17. At number 16, the Denver Broncos, who I can't really believe are sitting at number 16. But in a world where we have coaches like Gerard Mayo and Dave Canales and, whatever the Titans coach is, and, we've got Dennis Allen, like Sean Payton is a difference between 30 and 16 for this team. If you put Sean Payton in New England, this New England might be 4-3. If you put Sean Payton in Denver, they're 4-3, right? So Denver, I think their defense has been legit awesome, like borderline top 5. I think statistically, they're definitely in the top 5. Their pass rush has been deadly. They know how to stop the run. Their interior D-line, I think it was super overlooked entering the year. It was my favorite part of their team. John Franklin Myers, who would have thought he's really good at football? I told you that for like 8 years. Jets fans didn't believe me. Look at their run defense currently. No John Franklin Myers. What happened? Zach Allen is really good. I've loved him for years. DJ Jones, all those guys that are playing. The secondary didn't even have Pat Surtain. They still looked really good. They're opportunistic. They're big play oriented. Bo Nix is not good, but at least he's athletic. I think that's the thing I can say admirably about him is most of the time he finds completions, especially on screens and underneath plays, and he can avoid negative plays because he is more athletic than I maybe gave him credit for. He can move, he can run, he can scramble, and he's a little bit of a gamer. He does miss the odd throw. He missed a few against the Saints. If this team had a legitimate quarterback, I would be a lot higher on them, but at least they have a very good defense. They're very well game managed by Sean Payton. Their offense is smart. They don't try to beat themselves. They run the ball. Like, at number 16, the Broncos are just a very solid, they're almost like a worse version of the Steelers. At number 15, the Chicago Bears. The Bears are a team that kind of plays like Denver, but they have better talent. Like, they're very defensive oriented, but they also have a way more gifted quarterback, way more gifted receivers. Their O-line is probably worse, but they do still create explosives in the run game. Chicago is a promising football team down the stretch here. The one thing I have to say about Chicago is I want to see them play more legitimate competition. They've been feeding on really terrible teams, and Caleb's been playing better. I still don't think he's played amazing. I think he's been good. I think he's been improved, but I think he's been spotty, especially in terms of pocket presence and knowing where to go with the ball, when to go with the ball, when to get rid of the ball, how to manage a game. The deep accuracy still leaves something to be desired. The timing overall leaves something to be desired, but I feel like his stats have proven that he's improving. He's finding more completions. He's taking more checkdowns. He's more in rhythm than usual than he was at the beginning of the year, and he's growing and he's learning, which is good. The O-line is also getting a little bit better. I don't know if that's just the competition. Keenan Allen looks healthier and not fat, which is nice. DJ Moore is still really good, and Cole Kmet's good, and DeAndre Swift's playing well, and so they've got a good mix here. I'm still not convinced by their offensive coordinator. Their defense is top-notch. They've got a good balanced team. It's just like, it feels like they're a little bit above average. That's kind of where I have them ranked. So, the Bears. At number 14, I have Seattle, which is a tough one. I've seen some people rank them like probably lower than this. I've seen also them ranked in the top 10. So, Seattle's really interesting. Geno is still one of my favorite quarterbacks. I love Geno, the guy. I also feel like he's just very capable of putting up big-time numbers in any game, in any setting, against any defense. He's willing to be aggressive. He's willing to rifle the ball. He's more athletic than you think. He's got better pocket presence than you think. He's extremely accurate. He's got a good arm. I really like Geno. He's a good leader. DK's injury hurts them short term. I wonder how that's going to work against the Bills if he's out. Tyler Lockett is the best 2-minute receiver in football. Jackson Smith-Njigba, I feel like he's at the same time good and talented, but also underwhelming at the same time. Noah Fant, Jake Bobo, they've got plenty of playmakers, and Kenneth Walker is arguably a top 3 to 5 running back in the NFL. Their defense got healthier this week, which showed up against the Falcons. They still struggled to stop the run, but Byron Murphy is a monster. He really helps. Roy Robertson-Harris added to the mix. That helps. And Mike McDonald just got some of his pieces back. Reek Woolen could be back against Buffalo. That should help. This is a legitimate test, though. I don't think Seattle is capable of beating teams like Buffalo. We saw it against San Francisco. I just don't think they're capable of beating this type of team, this quality of team. But they're definitely capable enough to beat a team in their same category, like the Falcons, who are pretty much the same type of team. I have the Falcons at 13. The Falcons have been better overall than Seattle this year, but Seattle did whoop them. I don't think the score was indicative of how good the teams actually are, though. I felt the game was closer than the score. But, I would say the Falcons have been better overall. They faced tougher competition overall. They've beat better teams overall than Seattle. It's just that Seattle had a really good day. 10-day rest, more time to get prepared for that game. All that sort of stuff. And Seattle really needed to win that game, while Atlanta, not so much. So that's kind of my feeling between these two teams. Very interchangeable type of teams. But Cousins, another quarterback that I feel has been playing well all year, maybe had his worst game of the season against Seattle in terms of forcing mistakes, in terms of his mobility definitely lacking, in terms of missing open guys at times. Drake London has been really, really impressive this year. Bijan, he feels like he's playing his best football of his career right now, just in terms of statistical production the last couple of weeks. They still failed to really put any offense in the 20s and 30s last week, which was odd. Darnell Mooney's been a great addition. Their O-line has mostly been good, but I think it's overrated. The defense is bad, which I feel like the defense is the reason I don't really believe in this team. I feel like they just give up too many easy completions. They give up too many third downs. They don't have an effective pass rush. They're really a bend but don't break defense, and they often bend. So at number 13, I have the Falcons. At number 12, the Steelers. I've been holding back on the Steelers because, one, they're pretty much the same team every year. They're very predictable in terms of their production and result. They have a winning record. They never have a losing record, but they're never that good. They haven't won a playoff game since 2016. Now there's all of a sudden this excitement about the Steelers because they beat the Jets on Sunday night, although I thought the Jets would win, so I'll give the Steelers credit. For whatever reason, the Steelers just absolutely, utterly dominated the second half, despite getting outplayed in the first half. And I felt like a lot of it was momentum-based. I felt like a lot of it was fluky to a certain degree. Like, George Pickens made some of the craziest catches you've ever seen. Pat Freiermuth made one of the craziest catches you've ever seen. They had some of the craziest interceptions you've ever seen. They had a blocked extra point, a blocked field goal, like a whole bunch of crap. Okay, it was the Steelers playing Steeler football, which I guess is more predictable than most other teams playing that way. But what I was encouraged by the most was not Russell Wilson. It was actually them running the ball. I think they've ran the ball 2 weeks in a row pretty well, which is the main area I'm encouraged by. If they can run the ball like that with Najee and whoever else, they can be a sustainable offense with Russ trying to hit shot plays with a strong running game. I knew Russ would have good production with George Pickens because that's the type of receiver that he loves. Maybe they can add another veteran receiver here, maybe a Cortland Sutton or somebody like that could potentially help their offense a lot more because they need a number 2. Maybe get Freiermuth more involved. I know Russ loves tight ends. And defensively, they're definitely a top 3 or 4 unit. So their defense, there's no issues there. I just see a cap with this team. I see a ceiling with this team. I don't see them as anywhere near a contender, but I feel like they're a good team. I feel like they're capable of mucking things up and being very feisty. I just feel like they're not going to do anything come playoff time. And that's why I hold back my love for this team. Because remember in the offseason, I made a video about the Steelers. I said, this could be the best Steelers team we've seen in the past 3 years. But with their current quarterback situation, with their current receiving core, it's hard for me to buy in to a team being a true, good football team. You know what I mean? They're number 12. They're nearly top 10, but they're not top 10 because their ceiling is capped. At number 11, I have the Bengals. This is sort of the opposite. The Steelers have a better record than the Bengals. Are they a better team? Maybe if they played, I feel like they would split, right? I feel like the Bengals would win one, the Steelers would win one. But if you're asking me who has higher upside, which team could win the Super Bowl out of these two teams, who has a higher likelihood, I would lean towards the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals, they're 3-4 now. They've won 2 games in a row. They've won ugly football games, not through their strength. Their offense has been a little bit underwhelming against 2 good defenses, and their defense has won them games. So that's actually more promising to me than them going out and winning 4 consecutive shootouts. And, we saw them lose very winnable games against 2 elite contenders in the Chiefs and the Ravens that they easily could have won. So you're telling me the defense is improving, the run defense is improving, and the offense still has the same personnel? Put them in that big game setting, I feel like they're performing at that same rate where they could beat the Ravens, they could beat the Chiefs. The Steelers, I don't believe that to be the case. So this is a team that has a huge game coming up against the Eagles. Orlando Brown's injury could be significant enough for them to lose this game, but I do think that their offense can get the ball rolling again against the Eagles. It's going to be up to their defense to just be about average. If their defense is mid, this team could be a contender. Okay, that's how I feel about the Bengals. Entering the top 10, at number 10, I have the Commanders. The Commanders are at 10 because Jaden Daniels is injured and he might miss this week, which I think they're going to lose if he doesn't play. Although, who knows? I mean, Marcus Mariota did play exceptional football, which is really where I'm buying into the Commanders. Their offense, their scheme is really good. Their scheme is really sound. Everyone has a good understanding of it. They understand what their identity is. And Mariota was able to air it out and play good football. So we'll see if that was just the Panthers or what the case is, but they play Chicago now coming off a bye. That's going to be a difficult game to win without your quarterback who's playing very good football. And that kind of sucks because Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams would have been pretty sweet. Of course, that's just how the NFL works. Their defense has had some standout performances. This one against Carolina was impressive, as well as the game against the Cardinals, I felt was also pretty impressive, but I still don't believe in the defense. I don't believe in the personnel from a back end perspective. And, losing Jonathan Allen is an absolute backbreaker to their pass rush. So I think the Commanders are a pretty one-dimensional team. And that's why I see them as a typical wild card type of candidate, but I don't necessarily see them as a Super Bowl contender. They're a very young team. So I think Commanders will respect that. I think the Commanders fans will understand that. I think this is still a team that a playoff appearance would be an absolute exceptional feat for them. That would be step one, checklist, right? Year 2, year 3, that's where you're looking to ascend, get a better overall team. And if Jaden Daniels is really legit, he'll maintain consistent and good for those years to come. So at number 10, I have the Commanders. Respect what Dan Quinn has done with this team, though. I haven't really talked about Dan Quinn, but he's put together a good staff. He's put together an identity, a culture for this team that's so big for them. This is a franchise that's been lacking identity, culture. And the most impressive thing to me about the Commanders is they blow teams out. I mean, they blow teams out of the water. They don't win close games. I mean, this team just smacks you. So at number 10, the Commanders. At number 9, I have the Eagles. I was very impressed by the Eagles' defense against the Giants. And now some of that might be Andrew Thomas and the Giants just in general, but their offense was Saquon driven. They ran the ball exceptionally well. A.J. Brown is an absolute freak show. Devontae Smith is good. Jalen Hurts is not good, but when they run the ball like that, who really cares? You can throw the ball 14 times and win by 4 touchdowns. Their defense, though, their front 7 was all after Daniel Jones. 8 sacks. Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Nakobe Dean. They showed out, man. That D-line showed out. And I love their young corners. Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean. They're playing well. Fangio's got these guys playing hard, playing fast, playing smart. So at number 9, this could be a defensive run-oriented Eagles team that can compete with a majority of teams because of it. We'll see how their defense fares against a legitimate offense and quarterback like Joe Burrow. Number 8, I got the 49ers. Now, the 49ers are going to be criticized for this ranking, most likely, by the comments. I know I'm going to hear it from a few people. That's fine. They lost to the Chiefs without their top 4 weapons. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Like, people might say that's crazy. Wow, the Niners suck. They're below 500. They didn't have the best football player on earth, Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion. People said that McCaffrey wasn't that important. I was saying all offseason he's probably the best player in the NFL. I guess we just disagree. Number 2, they didn't have Debo because he actually had pneumonia. So hopefully he's okay. Brandon Ayuk got injured in the second quarter. The only guy they had was George Kittle. Jawan Jennings was injured. Ricky Pearsall was in his first ever game. Like, they just didn't have enough weapons against arguably the best defense, especially pass defense in football. Like, the Chiefs shut you down. They lock you out. They play tight coverage. Purdy really struggled against it. And I wonder why. Like, he didn't have any of his weapons. And we know Purdy isn't elite. He needs help. Like, he's good, but, like, he's not elite. So, at least in terms of as a powerful thrower and as a guy that can kind of go above and beyond the offense. But they still made enough plays. If Purdy would have just executed in the red zone, that game would have gone down to a field goal. They might have won. Like, Brock Purdy made critical mistakes at the wrong time. 3 interceptions, 2 of them in the end zone, right? So that's how you lose a game to the Chiefs. Their defense, I thought, played actually really well. You know, they stopped the run mostly. Like, the Chiefs were able to grind out yards and drives, but that's going to happen. I mean, they still got Mahomes, and they've got Andy Reid, who's amazing. We'll talk about him later, but, like, I don't know. I'm just not discouraged by the Niners like other people after that game. Like, it was the best team in the league, and you were, like, significantly injured, and the sky is falling for the 49ers. But people forget that they were 3-4 in 2022, and they were 3-5 in 2021. So, like, they always start like this, other than last year. And it makes sense why they've started like this. They have a bunch of injuries. So, yeah, Ayuk might be out long term. We'll see if they try to make a trade or something, or Ricky could step up in the coming weeks. But they get McCaffrey back, man. They're going to get Debo back. They got Kittle. And their defense seems to be playing better. So they get Dre Greenlaw back soon. Like, they're still a legitimate team. And I think the next 3 weeks, they play Dallas. They're going to win that game at home. I'd be shocked if they lose. And if they lose, we'll reassess. And I'll hold myself to that. They have a bye week. They get McCaffrey back. They play the Bucs without Evans and Godwin. They're going to win. They dominate the Bucs. Then they play Seattle at home. They dismantled Seattle the first time. I think they can beat Seattle again. It won't be easy, but I think they should beat them. So they'll be 6-4. From there on out, we'll see how good they are, because they take on the Bills and the Packers at the end of the year, and the Lions. So we'll see where they line up once they have McCaffrey, and after the trade deadline, where they'll probably make a couple additions. So the Niners are still a top 10 team. They're still a contender to me. You may disagree, but that's how I stand here. At number 7, the Houston Texans. The Texans are interesting because I think the Texans are better than people think, but also worse than people think at the same time. Now, let me explain. I think how they've been playing this year is worse than people think. I think their offensive line has major issues when it comes to picking up stunts and blitzes, picking up, just the Packers like decimated them in that matchup in terms of the defense versus the offense and really being able to get pressure, that free runners at CJ Stroud. It looked a lot like the Niners in some ways when the Niners struggle. I would also say, on the other side, the flip side, the positive side, when you think about the Texans, okay, they're running the ball better as of late. Joe Mixon's playing great. Nico Collins is going to come back. Nico Collins is one of the best players in the NFL. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. You add him to the mix, it completely changes the dynamic of a defense, of their offense, completely, okay? Because then Diggs becomes the 2 and Tank becomes the 3, and they still got Mixon. And they've got Stroud, who's an elite player. Okay? So their O-line could still be a little weak if they have Nico Collins because he can overcome it. Stroud can find him in man-to-man coverage or whatever. Okay? Against the blitz, you can't really blitz them when they have Nico Collins. It's pretty much suicidal, right? Defensively, they're missing a lot of players. Last week against the Packers, they lost by 2 points against a legitimate Packers team. I think the Packers are very good. We'll talk about them. But think about this. They haven't had Christian Harris all year. Christian Harris is a very good coverage linebacker. He will be back soon. One of their biggest weaknesses right now is coverage at linebacker. He will be back alongside Aziz Shair. They got Danico Autry back this past week, but they don't have Mario Edwards, who's also been very good on the D-line. So that's 2 significant starters right there. Then you look at Jimmy Ward at safety, which is why I think they should trade for a safety because he's always hurt, but just throwing him out there, he is a starter. Then they didn't have Kamari Lassiter. Corner, starter. So they didn't have their starting linebackers. They didn't have a starting D tackle. They didn't have a starting safety. They didn't have a starting corner. They didn't have their second best player, and they lost by 2 to the Packers. So yes, they've been disappointing. Yes, they got dominated to a certain degree, especially on one side of the ball against the Packers. But I think this team is one of those teams that I've been saying all year. If they're healthy in January, that's where they're going to be dangerous because you put all those pieces on the field, it might change some things is all I'm saying. At number 6, the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I've moved the Vikings down pretty significantly after the loss of the Lions. And this is more so an adjustment coming week 8 because I'm looking more at who's going to win the Super Bowl, these teams that are contending. And for the Vikings, it feels like we saw a little bit of what we saw last year with their defense, where they're very turnover reliant, they're very negative play reliant, and it feels like their defense, I don't really want to jinx them or something. I hope I reverse jinx them, but it feels like their defense is going to regress. Like, they were very dominant at the start of the year. They were very dominant last year at the start of the year, and then they regressed. And some of that's injuries and things like that, and that might also be the case. But I feel like the defense is going to be good, but I'm not sure it's going to be dominant. And I feel like this defense needs to be very good for them to win against legitimately good teams. So, like, they were amazing against the Niners. And that's why they won. They were amazing against the Texans. That's why they won. And those were both injured teams. With the Lions are playing a better football than the Texans, better football than the Niners right now. But it felt like the Lions, what they did best was just avoid mistakes. And that allowed them to beat the Vikings. Offensively, I was somewhat encouraged by Minnesota. Like, Darnold played pretty well. Jefferson is awesome. Aaron Jones is a stud. Their O-line is excellent. I think it's probably the most underrated O-line in football. They do have great coaches, but it feels like if this team has to rely on Sam Darnold to win, they're probably not going to win. He needs to be a passenger. They need to have a dominant defense. So that's why I have them at 6. At number 5, I've got the Packers, who did lose to the Vikings, but that was Jordan Love's first week back, and actually the Packers dominated the second half of that game. So at number 5, I have the Packers. I thought they were very impressive against the Texans. Although the Texans, like I said, were beat up, I think that the Packers defense is starting to really grow on me. I was very impressed with their blitzes, their blitz packages, their play calling in general. Their secondary was very, very impressive. And their run defense is the best it's been in like 5 years, maybe more than that. So the Packers defense could be top 10 right now. You combine that with one of the most explosive offenses in football, a plethora of receivers, Josh Jacobs in the run game, and Jordan Love, who at any given moment can play like Aaron Rodgers in 2011, although he could also play like Brett Favre in 2008. That's why I have the Packers at number 5. I really like them. Well-coached team on both sides. Really young, talented, fast team. At number 4, the Buffalo Bills. My actual inner thought about the Buffalo Bills is that this could be their year. And I'm going to get yelled at for that in the comments, and people are going to laugh at me, and that's fine. But I just love the Amari Cooper trade. And it felt like the type of move that could be a missing piece for a team that might not match up the best with certain teams, like the Ravens, for example, but their main obstacle is the Chiefs. And I feel as good about the Bills playing the Chiefs as I ever have this year. And if you put Josh Allen in the playoffs and you give him 4 downs to score, and you have a run game with Josh Allen, and you have a number 1 receiver with Josh Allen, you have a capable tight end and a capable slot receiver, and you have a defense that once they get healthy, I mean, you really think about this defense, if Matt Milano is there, they've got one of the best linebacker duos in football, a really underrated defensive line, a really good trio of corners, a really good pass defense. This could be the AFC champs. They could be. So at number 4, I have the Bills. Extremely impressive against Tennessee in the second half. Absolute domination. And it was a good sign that we saw early success for Amari Cooper as well. At number 3, I have the Lions. The Lions were very impressive against the Vikings. They won a tough game. They were down 10-0. They came back. They surged in the second quarter for 21 points. They sort of let go of the game in the third quarter, but they won in the end. And Jared Goff is playing phenomenal football. But I will say, I love how Goff is playing in the pocket. I love how fast he's playing mentally. I don't think he's ever played this quick in an offense before in terms of reading the field and going to the right player with the ball. I think he's playing as tough as he's ever played in the pocket, making big-time throws down the field. He is elevating the offense. But the offense is as well coordinated and schemed and just calculated as any offense in the league. If not, it is the most well-schemed and positioned offense from a personnel standpoint and a collaborative schematic standpoint. So I mean scheme and players understanding what they need to do together, right? And that's the Lions for me. The offensive line is the best in the league by far. The running backs are awesome. Gibbs was dynamic against Minnesota. They had every answer to the test. Amon-Ra played really well. Jameson's going to be out a couple of weeks. We'll see how they adapt to that. Tim Patrick looks pretty good. The defense, I am concerned about the secondary, and I'm concerned about the pass rush. I'm concerned about the pass defense in general, which could be backbreaking for them. That kind of allows teams like the Seahawks, the Falcons, teams that are not as good as them in the NFC, maybe flirt with being in a game against them, which I don't love. I don't love how they match up with Green Bay because of that to a certain degree. And then I do feel like their offense might be the best right now, or it's in the top 3. But if the defense is not going to get a pass rush and they have to blitz to get pressure, they need to make a move at the deadline. So, yeah. I am not on the board with other people, on the train with other people where it's like Lions are automatically Super Bowl. Like, they're there. Like, I saw Cowherd say, like, it's Lions and Chiefs. Just get it over with. Like, to me, no. I don't agree with that. I just think the Lions are still pretty flawed, but especially, like, mostly defensively. But I also can see the path for them because their offense is so dominant and Goff is playing so well. So at number 3, I have the Lions. At number 2, I have the Ravens. The Ravens have been very dominant in recent weeks, and you can't deny their offense. Their offense has been probably the best in the league the last couple of games. Lamar is playing in the category of the best quarterback in the league. He's debatably been the best quarterback in football so far this year. And I think what's really stood out to me, like some people might just say it's Lamar, but I've always seen Lamar play this well. Like, I don't really see it as Lamar has gotten better. Like, I really don't see it that way, which is maybe where I'm disconnected from other people with this Lamar conversation. Like, I've been a Lamar guy since day one. When people said he couldn't pass in college, I was on the opposite end of the spectrum. So, and I've always been there. So for me, I think it's been the offense. I think it's the scheme. I think it's the addition of Derrick Henry. I think it's other things. It's not Lamar. Lamar's playing the same. He's been the same the whole time. I just feel like Flowers is the best receiver he's had in a long time. Bateman is playing the best he's ever played. Mark Andrews now is kind of a compliment. Isaiah Likely is a stud, and he's like the 4th option in the receiving game. Justice Hill is a nice little 3rd down gadget back. Derrick Henry is a fucking beast. And their offensive line is good, and they're really good on play action. And because their running game is so dominant, it opens everything else up to be easy in the passing game. And everyone is wide open. Like, it's absolutely insane. Everybody is wide open. Against the Bucs, I didn't see a single throw that he made that was, like, tight. Like, it was ridiculous. So, yeah, the Ravens, their offense is sick. I'm worried about their secondary. I'm worried about their pass defense, their pass rush, and their just general defensive coordinating. I think their run defense is pretty good. It actually wasn't as good against the Bucs, which was odd, which is maybe not a good sign. But overall, I feel like their defense is good enough with the current offense they have. It's just, it does scare me because they might lose a shootout to a good team. And then if their offense isn't producing the way it does against other good teams and good defenses, they might slip up in a game in the playoffs, right? Like, so at number 1, I got the Chiefs. They're the only undefeated team. And despite being probably the ugliest team in football, they are still the best team. And I thought it wasn't an easy game to go beat the Niners. You know, despite all the injuries they had in San Francisco, you still got to go to San Francisco in a hostile environment against a team that wants revenge, and you've got to win that game. And they mucked it up. They dirtied it up. They got key clutch turnovers when they needed it. Mahomes did not play well, except for maybe the really clutch moments at the end where he had to play well, and he did. I thought their tackles didn't play well. I thought their O-line in the interior was the reason they moved the ball, because they were able to get push up the middle just enough for their running game to make some key conversions. I thought that Noah Gray played well and Hardman played well, and Kelsey had a quiet game, but I feel like they need more out of their receivers. They need to probably make an addition. They need to call the Rams for a Cooper Kupp, but their defense is probably the most clutch defense in the league for sure. Is it the best defense? It's at least right there in the conversation. McDuffie played great. I thought that Karlaftis played great. And Spags had another great plan against Shanahan. You know, despite the personnel, they still won that matchup. So, yeah, Chiefs are number 1. They're undefeated. So we'll see if anyone can take them down. Those are my power rankings entering Week 8. Those are my honest thoughts about your team. Thanks for watching. Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe. Peace, guys.